Hey everyone, so today I have a really cool and special guest. His name is Calix, and he is the co-founder of One Academy, and he's going to talk about that a bit more today. So, Calix, if you could just tell listeners a bit more about yourself and One Academy, that would be amazing.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I'm Calix, and I'm really interested in software engineering and computer science. I am the co-founder and CTO of One Academy, and I guess a little bit more about One Academy is it's basically an e-learning platform that covers like a wide variety of topics, and I think a good comparison to like modern day platforms would be Udemy and Skillshare. You know, there are obviously other competitors like Khan Academy and Coursera, but we don't really operate in the same field as them, whereas they focus more on the academic side of e-learning. And so basically what we're trying to do is, or I guess the whole basis or the whole idea behind One Academy is that there's already so much good content out on the internet. If you look on, just YouTube in general, there's a lot of great tutorials and there's a lot of great YouTubers just kind of putting out such great academic content on the platform. The only issue with YouTube is that it is technically still an entertainment platform and it's still a business, and so they run ads and it's a little bit distracting. And then you could be watching the best content on YouTube. On the side, there'll be videos on maybe like Logan Paul or some cat videos or some meme videos, and so in that sense, it's not necessarily the most I guess productive environment to learn. And so basically, what we're doing at One Academy and is what we're doing is we're curating content from YouTube, and we're basically crowdsourcing it on our platform. And we have a team of we call them curators. And basically, me and my co-founder Michael, we are basically curating all of this content, and it's because we're not generating the content ourselves, or we're not having to recruit creators like Udemy does or Skillshare does. We're actually able to grow the amount of content we have really fast. And so just as of a couple of days ago, we have kind of went through a gigantic session of content curation. And so as of right now, I don't have the exact numbers, but we have somewhere around 800 to 900 courses, around I think 20,000 videos on the platform. And the platform is only around like a month and a half old. And so I think like the whole content curation idea was validated by Michael. I think a little bit more about Michael. He is my co-founder. He's the CEO of One Academy, and he's honestly one of the most accomplished people, or one of the most accomplished students I've ever met. And so he actually validated this idea over the course of 2 to 3 years. And some people may have seen this video. He made a video, and it's called "Why Skillshare Sucks." And it's basically talking about how there's this barrier of entry into these kinds of platforms. Not just like, okay, you have to pay for these kinds of services. With Udemy, you have to pay on a course by course basis. Skillshare is a subscription basis, and a lot of the content is just it's good content for sure. But that's probably one of the biggest barriers of entry. And since we're curating content from YouTube, we're able to list all these courses for free, and so that's also something that kind of differentiates us from these platforms. But yeah, that's just kind of like a brief overview. Everything's still kind of early in its state, but the amount of traffic that we've been able to get without doing any huge growth marketing tactics has actually been pretty surprising.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. And that's insane to hear. You have like, I think you said 800 to 900 courses. Is that right? That's amazing. So we kind of went over what One Academy is, but like, what do you kind of aspire? What do you see for the future of One Academy?
Yeah. So I kind of see this, you know, since we don't have a premium or a freemium model, because we really want to make this super, accessible for anyone with an internet connection. And so because we don't have that, we do have different ideas in mind for revenue generation. But basically, our biggest goal is to just create this gigantic user base. We've talked with a lot of advisors and mentors, and so they as well as us kind of see a lot of potential for the amount of users that we can kind of we can acquire on this kind of platform. And that's probably what we're aiming for the most. And so we do have we do have projections or goals or milestones, whatever you want to call it, for the amount of users that we're gonna get on this platform. It's not public yet, so probably not going to share it. But that's probably what I see the most for this kind of platform. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. And I totally understand that because, like you said, you guys are still in the works of things. So I totally understand if you don't want to say anything that you're still working on. And then what's or who do you want to impact the most with One Academy? Like, do you have a specific market or demographic of people you're trying to help?
Yeah, yeah. So the niche that we're actually settling into is it's really interesting because we have so much content that we can really settle into any niche. Like if you really want to think about it, Skillshare, they settle into more of like a humanities or a creative type of niche with the content that they have. And Udemy settles more into a technical niche for developers or IT experts or things like that. Even though they have content on all sorts of different subjects, they all have their certain specialties. And so because we have so much content and we didn't start out with a specific niche, we can really settle into anything that we'd like. And we that also opens up the possibility if we even do. A big niche that we are trying to settle into would be exponential technologies. That's just like that involves quantum computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of those kinds of things because it's a field that's not going away for a long, long time. And that's definitely a sector of content that is really lacking on platforms like Udemy and Skillshare. They have courses on it, but a lot of the sorry about that. A lot of the a lot of the content that they have, it's more geared towards the nowadays more practical subjects, and so I think that's definitely a niche we can hit really really nicely.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. And then what advice do you think you would give to other students or people just trying to pursue this type of startup or even like organizations, different things like that?
Yeah. So I get this question weirdly a lot. I think I'm definitely not the most qualified person to answer this question. There are people that are insanely good. Like for example, someone I really look up to, Chinmai, who was just on this podcast.
Oh,
She's a great person to go to for this kind of idea. Like I've just kind of been in this space for the last 4 to 5 months, 4 to 6 months, somewhere around there. But I think like probably the biggest, and it sounds cliche, it's just like you really gotta love what you're working on because I think it's more about you're probably gonna give up if you don't really like what you're working on. And it's also really important that I'm pretty sure everyone kind of starts their own initiative from that kind of standpoint, but it's really easy to get veered off and be like, oh, well, this is what I kind of wanted to start, but this is what the market wants, or this is what, this person wants, or I think this would be good. And though finding what's good for the market, if you're working on a product for sure, finding what's good for the market is good. It should only change specific operational parts of what you're doing instead of the entire idea or the entire basis of what you're doing. So I think like you got to find that kind of place, but then you also got to stay on that track or else things might not go the way you want.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's definitely a commonality between like the more successful initiatives and the ones that just die off, after high school. And you can see that when people are actually passionate about something that they're doing or when they're just like using it as another college app kind of booster, right? So
Yeah.
definitely agree. Going on to your mindset now more, could you describe a time when your work was ever criticized and how did you handle that?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I kind of build everything for One Academy, and I've built a lot of projects before, and so like a common thing for anyone who's building anything or any engineers or software developers out there who are listening, we all kind of understand that there's a lot of criticism that goes behind what you build, and it happens on a daily basis for me on One Academy. I build most of the infrastructure, most of what you see for one academy, and there's always bug reports and there's always criticisms coming in, and it's really easy to get discouraged with that. So I don't think I can describe a specific time. Like I'm pretty sure one of the most recent times was we recently made a rebrand from EdTube to One Academy. So it used to be called EdTube. And I had worked on this rebrand for I think 6 to 7 hours straight on one night. We had to change the designs and we had to change social media accounts and made a couple different changes. And so I had worked on that until like around 10 at night, and I was really, really tired, but I was able to finally broadcast everything. And after all of that, all I wanted to see was, good responses and all of that. And we definitely did get good responses and congrats. But there were those few people that just had to bring up like, oh, this is not working, or this is not working, or, this doesn't look that great. And so in those cases, it's very demoralizing. But I think it's just like, over time you just get used to it, and now it's very easy. It's rare that I would launch something and have the expectation that nothing's going to go wrong. So yeah, I mean, I can't really describe one specific time, but that's probably the most recent time, just a couple days ago.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a good like lesson that you almost kind of learned, right? Is that whenever you do, nobody's gonna perceive it always just like, oh my God, I love it, right? There's always gonna be those critics out there, but I like how you were able to kind of learn that and be ready for that, right? Be ready for that wave of criticism. Yeah, so I would agree with that actually. And then how or have you ever been on a team when somebody wasn't really pulling their own weight, and how did you handle that situation?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's inevitable whenever you're working with someone that workloads are going to be off. Um, I don't have too many of these encounters just because just from like a couple of months ago, I was mainly working on my own. Only now working in different teams and different companies do I really see this kind of issue popping up. And definitely not here to call anyone out. Definitely not. Everyone I work with, I love working with them, because if I didn't like working with them, I probably wouldn't be working with them. Because there's a ton of different things that anyone can do without working with someone they don't like working with. Um, but yeah, I think it does come a little bit. It is a little bit interesting, especially when you're talking about working on a company, because um, the amount of work that you can put in also depends on the amount of equity you have in the actual company. So I've worked in companies where I had equity, but because I had the majority, it was already predetermined that I was going to work harder than everyone, just because I own more of what's being worked on. But there are also instances where I had equal ownership, or even if it's just like a fun project. And especially when I talk about a lot of things from an engineering mindset, just because I am an engineer. And what's very common is that you would have a team with an engineer and or multiple engineers, mainly just one, and then you'd have someone maybe for marketing, or maybe they're good at sales, or maybe they're good at branding and things like that. And those kinds of specialties, though they're very, very important, you can't run a successful business or a company without those kinds of specialties. But those fields definitely do not take as much time or as big of a workload as it does to build the actual product. And so I've been in that situation where, I'm, working on this product for 4 or 5 hours a day. And then we have someone in marketing who maybe has an equal ownership, or maybe coming up on that as I do, but they would put in maybe 1 to 2 hours. And it's not to say that, um, Michael has really taught me that, it's really about the value add that people bring to the company, or the team, instead of just the amount of hours that you work. But inevitably, that engineers work a lot more than that. So I think it really varies from time to time. But yeah, it's a very unclear situation that I'm still trying to figure out myself as well.
Hmm. No, yeah, totally. I understand that because literally, if people don't know, Calix is literally a 15-year-old startup engineer. Like that's insane to me to think about because especially since I think you're in like literally in Silicon Valley, right? Like you live or near Silicon, right? So
Yeah.
like you're surrounded by all these amazing people. Like me I'm in Michigan, right? In like very suburban area. I don't see that a lot. Like having such young, amazing minds that like are able to do these different things, like make their own startups like you are and make them with a passion, right? Because I see a lot of my peers, again, not trying to call anybody out around me,
Mhm.
but a lot of times I see them and they'll just make super simple little nonprofits and then call it a day once they get into college, right? And then they just like it's literally just gone. You never see it again. It's just one time thing. But I can tell like with you guys, like that I've interviewed like Chinmai and you do these things with a passion and you're trying to like make this go somewhere, right? Which is just insane to me. I think that's amazing. But I totally understand that, still being young and like still figuring things out. Of course, not everything's gonna be crystal clear. So I totally understand. Um, and then my next question, this one is definitely a heavy one. So take your time if needed. But what do you think your greatest failure or regret is, and what did you learn from
Oof. Okay. Um, let me see.
it?
Um, I think so I have been in the whole I have not really been in the whole CS scene for that long. I mean, I guess it's relative, but I'm coming up on I do remember the dates. I remember the dates of when I start certain things just because it's sentimental for me. But I'm coming up on like 2 years now of me getting my start in the whole space, and so um, I would say like a lot of people kind of assume that my first initiative was launch tech or known as Ortex or things like that for people who know me, but it wasn't. It's actually my third. I had two. I had started two initiatives way back in like early 2019, and they didn't turn out so well. But I would say the my second initiative was probably my biggest failure. But there are others that rival it. There's a lot to choose from. But yeah, so basically the initiative was a nonprofit, but I had actually not really understood the whole nonprofit space of like, oh, we advertise on Instagram and we do all that kind of stuff. Before quarantine, I never really thought to look outside of where I lived, and there's a lot of high caliber individuals here, but like there's a lot more just outside of the state, and so I had started it. It was basically the whole idea behind it was. Um, it was a kind of like a team of high school developers and basically kind of going around doing pro bono software consulting work for different nonprofits who didn't have the funds to kind of or the team to build different applications that they needed. And I honestly still don't really care what anyone else says. I still think it was a good idea. um, and it's not something I would go back to, but I probably I will not like kind of I still think it's a good idea, and I just can't really go back to it. But basically, I really like the idea. I still like the idea. The only thing where that went wrong with the idea is the fact that it was a team of high school students, and so I'm not gonna say any names, but it was a really, really, I was really naive at that time where I thought that, if I bring someone on my team, they're going to work hard, right? I was not, I was really inexperienced as a developer back then. I thought I was really good, but I really wasn't. And so my goal was actually just to bring on as many people as I could. And I didn't actually know that many people who knew how to code. So I was bringing on a lot of different people. It wasn't that many now that I think back on it. I had a total of like 10 people, 12 people. And that was probably a big learning lesson because I had brought on a lot of people, but they didn't really operate the way that I had expected. They didn't really, when I had tasks that needed to be done, um, you know, sometimes it wasn't super reliable to make sure that they kind of executed on those tasks. And obviously, I still held myself to the standard that when your team fails, it's not your team's fault; it's the leader's fault. So It was my fault for, bringing on team members that I didn't screen them hard enough. I did give them interviews, but I accepted everyone that I interviewed. So there was no reason to actually interview anyone. But yeah, so that was probably my biggest failure. There were a lot of different things that I did wrong within that span. It spanned from July 2019 to December of 2019, and yeah. So when it ended, it was pretty sad, but I think like it was really really helpful with the things that I learned from that experience, and I learned a lot about how important team building is. If you don't have a good team, it's better to just do it yourself. But we all know that you can't do it yourself, depending on what you're doing. So I learned a lot about team building, and I can safely say that if I didn't have that failed initiative, I would have launched tech or tech. So it definitely would have failed a lot earlier than it ended. And so with Ortex, I was actually able to recruit a very good team, and I was able to recruit a team that was even bigger than the one that I had done last year. But everyone was just pulling their weight so well, and the management was a lot better than last time. There were obviously their slip ups, but I think like that failure was a really really great learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes your biggest quote unquote failure can become your greatest like opportunity. Or I remember I went to this entrepreneurship summer camp. It was like a week, just really quick to learn about entrepreneurship, right? And one thing that they really reiterated throughout the camp was fail fast, right? Because you want to fail as quick as you can, learn from that, and then from there you can like slowly start succeeding, right? Which was literally shown through your process where you kind of failed and you kind of learned, okay, team working or team building is very important and I should implement that more into my future projects. And now your future projects, like you said, I think Ortex, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. How do you say it?
Or Texo.
Oh,
Yeah.
text. Oh, yeah, or Texo. Like, and how you've been able to and have a really amazing team and maybe even more team members than before. But now you're learning, right? Like how to lead a team and how to do it in a successful way and to make Ortexio successful. But yeah, I totally agree with that. Now going on to something more optimistic. What do you think you're most proud of?
Um. Yeah. I would say I'm pretty proud of my journey in general. I'm pretty sure Chinmai said this on her on her podcast. I think I listened to it like a couple of days ago, but yeah, I'm pretty proud of my entire learning journey in CS. Pretty I think I'm proud of it a lot, just because I don't think uh, I think success is very subjective, where it can mean a lot more to different accomplishments can mean a lot more to other people than it does to others. And so I don't feel like I've accomplished anything that's super amazing. I'm definitely proud of myself of the things I've accomplished and the things that I'm doing, but I think the my entire learning journey has been super amazing in that it was a lot of things that I look back on. I was really really lucky. I was really lucky in. For example, um, I think like going back to like more towards the beginning, like the way I actually entered the space was really interesting, because I entered in the space in through like I got into like interested in like ethical hacking and penetration testing, and testing different systems and things like that. And it was just fun things like hijacking a webcam, or I think one time I accidentally installed a virus on my sister's computer. And so it was those kinds of projects and the things I was working on were really really fun, and it really ignited um, a I guess a passion inside of me, because just a couple months before that I was kind of like forced to take these coding classes, and I hated it. And so it was really interesting to see that switch over the course of like a couple of months. And I think another thing that I'm lucky for is the fact that I actually had to, I guess, kind of learn how to code by myself, which really built up a good sense of discipline and work ethic in the space. And the fact that I wasn't actually, actually, I kind of want to touch on this. is like a stigma or like kind of like this assumption that, oh, I'm gonna get into coding, I better join a community, right? I better surround myself by people who have the similar interests. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what I've noticed and things that I'm lucky for is that I'm so lucky that I did not get involved in any communities at all or any competitions at all within the first year. Like the only thing I did to actually show off my skill was after an entire year of just learning and taking courses, I attended a hackathon, and that's the first thing I did. And so I'm really lucky that that happened because I see it all the time. There's a lot of beginners, and there's a lot of beginners that join these kinds of communities. And I'm not talking down on these communities, but communities like Hack Club. Hack Club community is great. It's filled with so many smart developers, but that's the thing because there's so many smart developers and engineers in that Slack. Like I've been in there for almost a year now, and yet I still feel like really really stupid because everyone there is just so smart. And I think that breeds up kind of like a I guess like a subconscious feeling like for beginners that, oh wow, everyone else is so great, but some of them are the same age as me, some of them are younger than me. I feel like I have to be as good as them. And that kind of comes out in two ways. That either comes out in imposter syndrome, or that also either comes out in, I guess, speaking louder than your actions, just like making you seem like you're better than you actually are. And I'm not going to say that that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's something that can be avoided if you just kind of like, it's kind of just, everyone else is so good. I feel like I have to be as good as them, but I just don't have the skill yet. I didn't have the time yet. So I guess I'm just going to say that I'm this good when I'm really not. So I think like I'm pretty proud. I'm pretty lucky along my journey that I didn't join those kinds of communities until I was like a year and a half in, and I actually started to do things. And I think the same goes for hackathons. Like they say that they're very beginner friendly, and I think this might be offensive. So I'll just preface this by saying that I absolutely love hackathons. I attended so many hackathons. I don't attend them anymore. I'm not a huge fan of virtual hackathons, but I've attended them. I've competed, I've mentored, led workshops, and luckily I've actually lately had the privilege to be a judge actually, which has been such a great experience. And so I love hackathons, but I would say for straight beginners, I don't think it's the best entry because if you take the competition the wrong way, it could really give off the wrong impression of everything.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that as well. So I actually want to go into business, right? And so I feel like for business, you've probably heard of like DECA, right? Those types of clubs. And I feel like I would equate that to what you said, I think Hack Club, things like that. I love DECA as well. I love it. I love the environment doing role plays, which is where you simulate like a real life business scenario, right? I love it. But the thing with DECA, it can get super competitive, right? And when you like just go in and then you start getting part of this like super competitive community and where they only care about what placement you get, right? And like you mentioned with imposter syndrome, that happens a lot. I notice with a lot of my DECA peers, because they just feel like they're not good enough compared to their friends because they have to get this award, right? To have their worth be equated to that, right? To that award. Um, but if like they tried things outside of that, like I think I'm the first one in my community to do something like a podcast. And that's like crazy to me to think that nobody thought to just go outside of the box and do something that's maybe not necessarily the norm like deck or host, which I'm not saying don't do those. Like those are still great things just to do. But I think it's so important to also try different things. Like I think I've learned so much that I couldn't have learned in these clubs through like this podcast, right? And I've been able to talk to people like you, Chinmai, so many different people and just like learn from them, right? So I would definitely agree with everything that you said. Um, but yeah, now going on to more of like your work style. I know you mentioned in the beginning how you worked almost like I think 7 or 8 hours on one of your startups. Was it One Academy? I'm not positive, but and yeah, it was. Okay, so I just wanted to know how you kind of like manage your time because obviously you have to work on all these different projects, and I just would love to know like with school too, how you just manage that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I guess starting off with school, I am in an independent study program. So I'm not in, well, when things were still in person, I'm not in public school. And I do have a lot of people that I know in the public school system, and it's brutal just to hear about it, just being on Zoom for so long. But I'm in an independent study program. It's called like it's like online school, and I'm not new to this space. I've this right now. I'm in my 6th year of this program, and this program is really great in that it's really flexible, and so you really can kind of finish your work as fast as you can. And I'm not really one to like care that much about school, and so I kind of just like speed through my work as fast as possible every single day. So um, I don't know. I think other people they spend like 7 8 hours, not including homework. I spend around probably like 1 to 2. But the thing is that it's really about how fast you work and how much effort you're going to put in. Um, I have people that I know in the program that still spend a good 6 to 7 hours a day, but because they spend 6 to 7 hours a day, their grades are just through the roof. I think I know this girl. She finished her last semester with an average that was like 103%. So I think that program is really great, and I'm also really lucky to be in that program because a little bit of a funny story is um, ever in the last summer they had that transition from like okay we're going to go online instead of staying in person for public schools, and because of this everyone wanted to switch out over to my program, and so we actually had a backlist of I think 9,000 families across the nation wanting to join this program and enroll, but they just couldn't. And there were some issues with the funding from the government because they I think the government I don't know, I heard it from my mom's friend, but the government wanted students to stay in public schools, but because they wanted to join these schools, and the school that I'm in, it's government funded. So what kind of helped them incentivize is they actually took away some of the funding from my program and they put it into these public schools. So it was a weird scenario where it was just, hey, this online school is getting more students, yet they're losing money, but the public schools are getting less students, but they're making more money. So it was like an interesting dynamic. But that's kind of how I manage school. It's just not really a huge time commitment. But it's really easy to get distracted with all the free time that you get. And there are obviously downsides with online school. It's definitely a lack of social life and social interaction, but I guess it's kind of like the same story for everyone nowadays. And so, yeah, like the time that I don't spend on school, I really just spend, I do cut away time to just, exercise, get good amount of sleep and things like that. But that still gives me like the entire chunk of day just to work on these kinds of initiatives and projects. And so I'm really lucky to be in this program. But it does take like a certain level of work ethic and I guess you could say determination to stay focused for 8 to 10 hours a day just on these kinds of projects. And it's really easy to get burnt out. So yeah, hard work is something that kind of runs in my family. So it was never foreign to me. But I guess I'm lucky for that too.
Mhm. No, yeah, I think I would agree with that as well. Something that I actually have to say though, like I'm doing all online this year because my school gave us the choice. I'm in the public school system, and so they gave us the choice of doing hybrid, which would be 2 days in school and then 3 days of the rest of the school week virtual. But I was just like, I'm just gonna go full virtual because I don't want to take the risk, and because I know, people are gonna like be funny and like take off their mask, do something like that, and I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that. But so going virtual, I had hesitations and like kind of trepidations. I was like, how well is this gonna work, right? Like, how well am I gonna get my education as I would in school? But I noticed I actually love it so much because what the teachers do, they kind of do pre-recorded lectures and then just give us like 15 minutes on Zoom, tell us what to watch or what book work to do, and then we're done for that like hour. And that's just like how it is for each hour. And I have 6 hours in a day. And so I like it because I can just finish my work within the hour and then not have any schoolwork. So then after school, I can have time to work on, my college apps, my podcast, different things like that. But I think it still is definitely a time crunch because I'm still like school ends for me at 2 o'clock, and then so going from my bedtime, which is like 11 to 10 p.m., I only have like 8-ish hours, and that's like a really time crunch for me because I have to eat dinner, I have to get my exercise in, and then I have to get all this other stuff in, and it's definitely just like it always feels like I never have enough time, right? But I like how you have that where your school only takes around like an hour or two, right? And then you have time to focus on other things. But like you said, sometimes there's downsides where it's like sometimes you can't get focused because it's like so many distractions and you have so much time. I totally understand that though. But I think that's really interesting take because I had no idea that there was this type of program, right, that was for students that you could have more of an emphasis on projects rather than school. So I think that's really fun and interesting. Um, my next question is, was there ever a person in your life or your career who really helped like impact you or make a difference in it?
Sorry, there's someone at the door.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. You can go
Sorry,
get that if
give me
you want.
1 second.
Yeah,
Okay, so
okay. You're totally
there's a
fine. Don't worry about it. You're totally fine. You're totally fine. I can edit this out and you'll be fine. So here I can just say my question again real quick so you like can refresh. So I asked, was there ever a person in your life or your career who really impacted it or made a difference?
um yeah, yeah. Just trying to pick which one. um I think like there's like there's the cliche answers like definitely my parents, huge, they're really huge supporters of what I do. Um and I'm really lucky that they kind of they don't really they don't really hammer down what they want for my life. I guess, they kind of or I think it also takes like a certain amount of trust, like they kind of trust me to make my own decisions. But I guess that's like kind of like a cliche answer. Um, I I probably won't say this friend's name. I don't think they would like that that much, but I do have this friend for the last I think it's like not that long, last 2-3 months I think, and yeah, they've really encouraged me in like in I guess in areas of my life that I haven't really paid that much attention to. I've very much been career oriented, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think everyone just kind of has their own priorities, but yeah, this friend has really been encouraging in certain aspects of my life, like my social life and my personal life and all that kind of stuff. They've really helped me work through some issues that I've had before, and also just like with things that I kind of just don't care about, like standardized testing. They kind of just like forced me to study for that, just like at least a little, so I don't fail the test.
Hmm.
Because I'm really bad at those kinds of tests. I'm really bad at any kind of test. That's not really my forte. And so I'm really appreciative for them. I'm really careful not to say the
Yeah.
give away any info about that.
Hmm. No, definitely. I think like friends are so important. If you find like that one friend or even like that group of friends that you can stick with and you know are going to be there supporting you, helping you, right, encouraging you, like you said with standardized tests, because I relate with that. I hate SAT. I'm so glad I'm done with it. And I'm actually so glad that colleges this year are like going blind even or being test optional, which I love because same. I am so bad at tests and standardized tests are just like not it for me, but I think that's really nice that you have that friend that's like there to encourage you and tell you, okay, you got to study for this, and just like help you and support you, right? I think that's so important. A lot of people overlook that, you know. But yeah, I would have to agree with that. Now going on to some fun questions. There's no right or wrong answer, but if you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be? And even if you like where you are right now, that's totally fine as well.
Yeah, yeah. I actually so I am in Silicon Valley and I really really like it here. And you know, it's not even just like even though the weather is great and the specific neighborhood that I'm in is actually really amazing as well. But yeah, I would love to be actually not that far away in Los Altos or Cupertino, that kind of area. I'm thinking about more in terms of like living there, just because I'm not really like a huge travel buff. It's not like I hate it, but I'm not dying to go around the world, I guess. And so I live like actually like an hour and a half from Los Altos, but I've been there before, and it's super super nice because and Cupertino because you know you got all of those big tech companies there, and it's not even the fact that the big tech companies are there. It's like a nice atmosphere. You know, it's just so green. The temperature is perfect. I'm not sure if that's the answer you're looking for, but I would like it's so expensive to live there, but I would love to live there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. Whatever it feels good to you, that's the right answer. There's nothing. But that sounds so cool. I've never heard of Cupertino. Oh no, I've heard of it, but I've never like been. I never seen pictures. But from the sound of it, it being super green, having those cool companies, that sounds really cool. And yeah, I think you could. I think you could be successful there and like just live there. That seems fun. Now my next question is, what's the last book or magazine that you read?
I don't really read.
Oh,
Like, that friend really really teased me for that a lot. I really just don't read that much. I think the last book I read was probably a couple of months ago, has to be. I think it was I mean, I do read a lot. You know, you have to read a lot of documentation just to build things. But I think like the actual book, I think I read uh, Grit by Angela Duckworth. I highly recommend that book. It talks a lot about work ethic, but like still working smart at the same time. It's really, really great. They give like really great analogies to like, you know, how does grit, like a really scientific approach to hard work in terms of like, okay, how is the I guess grit different from like someone who lives here than someone who's training in the Marines or someone who's in the Navy or someone who's just a researcher and things like that. And so those are really that book is really interesting. And the author is super, super accomplished. So I highly recommend it.
yeah, that sounds really interesting. Like you said, taking like grit, but in different perspectives. Like one was like the army people, another one was like more like I think what you said, s- engineers or something like that. But that's interesting because like they're just so two different worlds, but then like the grit is still there, if that makes sense. Yeah, but that sounds fun. Sounds like an interesting read. Um, and then what do you like to do just like in your spare time other than these projects?
Um Yeah, I mean, I don't really have so much free time, I guess. I think like the nature of it is just you put in as much work as you'd like. Um, I do work on like, you know, there are side hustles that I work on for a couple hours at night or things like that. But you know, some days I will be a little bit burned out. It's just like kind of it's just like you kind of have to gauge when you feel like you're gonna burn out. And so I do enjoy listening to uh, music in general. I listen to music all the time, but specifically in those times, I do listen to podcasts. I do listen to mind maps. I listen to
Mm.
21st Century Visionary, a bunch of other podcasts, and it's really, really interesting to hear about other people who are very successful. And podcasts, different sermons, and I think I do um, I should do this more often, but I should go for more walks. I think like it's just like an easy way to relax and also exercise at the same time. It's like pretty great, but I just I just don't do it. I really need to though.
Hmm. No, yeah, definitely. That's something that my family really loves doing, which I think is really beneficial to me. Like they basically force us to walk as a family every single night, and it's just a good way to kind of relax, though, right? And like get become one with the nature almost, and just like get your mind out of whatever was going on that day, and just be in the nature, present in this time. But yeah, now going on to a brain teaser. If you woke up and had 2,000 unread emails and could only answer 300 of them, how would you choose which ones to answer?
Wow, I always have that many unread emails. Even more than that. Okay. Um, I think um, well, first off, I'd probably answer a lot of the forwarded emails that I get from Michael, from different investors and different opportunities and speaking events. I think another one would, uh, hmm, I think this kind of ties into like, didn't get the time to talk about it, but like, different job opportunities and internships. So I think like I'm kind of like progressively always applying for different positions. And so I would want to open those, just talking about next steps if they have those. Um, and I think also I'm like a part of different newsletters, like specific newsletters. I'm like a part of a lot of them, and a lot of them go to spam. But like specific newsletters give me like different uh, opportunities, like remote students. And also, I actually do really like the automated emails that I get from Indeed. I get like a lot of personalized job offers. Well, they don't offer me the job, but like job application opportunities. And so I really value those, and I actually do apply on a progressive basis. That's probably not that many actually. Probably I get a lot of emails from my server hosting providers telling me when my apps are about to shut down. And I think probably the last one would be um, Calendly notifications.
Oh.
It's like really, my email is really boring. I don't really get that many interesting things.
Yeah, no, I would agree as well. I literally in my inbox it says I have 16,000 emails right now. But I think that's mainly just from like the years of accumulated emails from like random brands, right, that I might have randomly signed it up for, but I forgot. And then like with college now too, they know that I'm a senior, and so it's just like a bunch of spam now. Every single day I get from all these colleges like saying, Anna, I'm gonna give you like a free college waiver or something, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, I'm not gonna apply, you know. But yeah, I think that's a good fair amount of emails. But yeah, thank you so much, Calix, for being on the podcast. It was wonderful talking to you, learning more about your mindset and about different things and obstacles you had to overcome, right, and how you handled those. And do you have any like plugs or anything for whatever it is, like One Academy or Texio, anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. I really, really enjoyed being on this podcast. Where they can find me. Well, first off, definitely check out One Academy. It's just oneacademy.org. And also, I think like it's always just like a struggle between LinkedIn and my personal website. I think my personal website, if you just want to learn more about me, is calix.dev. And definitely my LinkedIn is on there, so definitely shoot me connection request, and we can set up like a chat. I'm always open to chat with anyone. But yeah, that would be pretty much it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you again. This was so much fun, and I'm sure listeners will just learn so much more insightful like knowledge about this kind of coding like area, and then also about you in general, right? And thank you to people that have listened this far. Bye.